hopefully it doesn't bother the 3 people that I show this to. Well, Mr. Jason Weigandt, we're live now.
We're doing it.
We're doing it.
I love it.
I love that you took the time to follow through and be like, hey, you know what? We could do it.
I just don't, look, I'm going to see you every weekend. I don't want to be on the bad side. I don't want you to be mean mugging me and be like, this guy talked a good game and said he would give me time, but he won't do it. So let's just do it.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's all good. I appreciate it. So, we see each other all the time.
Yeah.
I know you just from the time being around you.
Yep.
When did you get into all this?
Yeah, like most, I got into it as soon as I can remember, as early as I can remember. The difference was I was not allowed to race or even own or touch a motorcycle when I was growing up, which I thought was normal. I didn't realize that that's crazy to like be a fan without riding. Mm-hmm. You know, people are fans of football without playing football, so I didn't know that was weird. But yeah, like according to my parents, my first word was car. Like I was just into things that moved and things with wheels, like a lot of kids, right? Whether it's motorcycles or Tonka trucks or construction trucks, whatever it might be. And that was always what I was into, you know, gravitated toward if there was a magazine laying in the house like that. So my parents were cool enough to be like, oh, we'll get them like a Power Wheels. And then I'm old enough where like this is when like ATVs, quads were like first coming on the scene. Mm-hmm. So I think they were like, okay, we'll go that far. So I got like a 50 Suzuki quad when I was just turned 6. And, you know, they just figured I'd ride in the yard or something. But here's the game changer. My dad worked for Bel Ray, the oil company. Mm-hmm. Nothing to do with racing. He was involved with how much solvent do we need to create this formula. Like it was more of like the chemist side. But they always sponsored the Unadilla race. They were one of the title sponsors. So one day my dad comes home from work and says, hey, we have to watch USA Network. There's a race on television and we actually have a commercial on TV.
Oh, wow.
It's like, Bel Ray is a commercial on TV? This is crazy, man. And it was a motocross race. You know, I owned a quad, but I had never seen a dirt bike race.
And what era is this? About
this
what?
This is 1985.
85.
Yeah, so I'm like 6 years old or whatever. I've just gotten this quad, but I didn't know racing even existed. And I see this race on TV. I've watched it now 10,000 times, that race. It was Bob Hanna and Johnny O'Mara battling it out. Mm-hmm. And it was like the coolest thing ever. And I was into it. And then my dad said, well, if you like this, we get all the magazines at the office. We just put them in the lobby. And then at the end of the month, we throw them out. I'll just bring them home. So that was my outliers thing. I had this unfair advantage. My whole life, pretty much, every motocross magazine I got to read for free. And as soon as I could read, maybe age 8, I was reading Cycle News and Motocross Action and every single ATV magazine also all the time. So I just loved it. It certainly wasn't pushed upon me. No one in my family had ever rode a motorcycle, raced, been to a race, anything. For some reason, when I first saw it, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But I bet you none of us can truly explain why. It just is, man. So there we go. I'm a lifetime fan since then.
And then you fast forward to today, and what is it that you do?
Yeah, so now I'm mostly known as the television announcer at the races. You know, I remember watching this first race on TV. We're actually here at Red Bud, and really cool with that, the announcer of that race on television was Larry Myers. They brought him back today because it's the 50th Red Bud. Yeah. So I met Larry a few times here and there. Our careers certainly didn't overlap, but he was here today. It's always neat. I don't think he believes me when I say, like, hey, I grew up, you know, to me, you're how motocross is supposed to sound on TV. I don't think he believes that. Probably thinks I don't even know who he is, because that goes pretty far back for a guy my age. But, yeah, so I was just a fan. Never asked for a motorcycle, never had one. Just had rinky-dink quads that we ride in, like, the woods or a sand pit or something. Mm-hmm. But I would go to the local races, the Englishtown Raceway Park is what we called it, the track in New Jersey. I would go to the local races as a kid and just watch. Not realizing that, like, dude, you're 10 years old, you could race. No other 10-year-old is going to these races, just sitting in the stands and watching the local races. I thought that was normal. Yeah. I had no idea. So, yeah, I didn't ride a bike until I was an adult, because then my parents couldn't stop me. But that doesn't mean I wasn't a fan. So what happens for me a lot of times, I think people think, like, oh, if you didn't race growing up, so you're new to the sport, right? And I'm like, no, not to watching. Yeah. I just never knew that the two things were always connected with everybody except me, apparently. If you watch it on TV and read the magazines, you must have a dirt bike, right? And I was like, no, I didn't. Yeah. I didn't know that was... the sport's not that popular. I didn't know anyone who had a dirt bike. It's not like I went to school and knew anyone that was into it. I'm just like, yeah, I just read the magazines. That's all I got.
So what was that like? Was that like having something in your back pocket that you're like... For me, when I was at that age, I was into Power Rangers and like skateboards and stuff. Yeah. So is it like something that you're always like looking forward to? Maybe
that
try
you're
and
gonna
share it with some
yes.
friends
Oh,
and
absolutely,
stuff.
dude. I'm not even joking, Anthony. There was a time where I was like, I wonder if I could like put up a sign on a telephone pole that says, "Do you like dirt bikes?
Yeah.
Here's my phone number." I had never. This is so weird. I literally talk about dirt bikes for hours a week for a living, for a job. I'm doing it right now, talking about dirt bikes. Until I was about 22 years old, I had never had a conversation with someone about dirt bikes. I just watched all these races on TV, boxes and boxes of VHS tapes of every race that was on TV, boxes and boxes of magazines, absorbing all this knowledge. Never bench raced with anyone, ever, until really the internet came around, and then you could actually find other fans of motocross to like talk with. But yeah, it was the strangest thing. And yes, I was hoping to find someone. I would try it. Like there would be a Supercross once a year in New Jersey, like we have now, and I'd be like, "Hey, there's a dirt bike race in Giant Stadium. Anybody going?" Like praying that there'd be some kid that would be like, "Yeah, I'm into it." No one was ever into it, man.
Yeah.
Never knew a single other kid who could name one dirt bike racer. So I was just, yeah, it was in the back pocket. Never came out though.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then, so how did that bridge over to getting involved with? What was your first gig inside the industry?
Yeah. So this is so funny. These two things are not connected at all. So the track that I used to, our local track, now I'm in high school or college or whatever, and I see an ad in the classifieds for autocross caution flagger. Pays $50 a day, and I'm like, $50 a day, that'd be rad. So I call, and it's it just has a phone number. I call, and it's that track, Raceway Park. And they're like, this is for our motocross track. And I'm like, oh my God, for real? I'm like, you'd pay me $50 to be a yellow flagger? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, do you have any openings left, is what I said. Because the first race of the year had already happened.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you have any openings? Do I need to wait until next year? And they're like, no.
Like, we need
you can come on
Yeah.
down, dude.
Yeah.
So I was so stoked, dude. I was getting paid $50 a day to be a flagger. Plus, I'm in college. $50. That's like
Yeah.
a month's worth of lunch.
Oh yeah.
So I was so stoked. That did not open any doors. At the same time, I've told the story in a few pods here and there, but yeah, the internet comes around. I'm starting to converse with people on message boards or whatever about racing. And I decided to go for it, kind of like you're doing here. I just put together the best possible letter to the editor I could ever do. This is when the RacerX magazine was just starting. It had been a newspaper. It had just turned into a magazine. I put together this incredible letter. I went to college for writing. A guy named Brian Staley, who was really the number two. Davey Coombs started it, and then Brian was the manager of everything. He wrote back, man, that's a really cool letter. We're going to put it in the next issue. And I was like,
Wow.
oh my God. And he's like, hey, if you ever go to any races, let us know. So there was one big race a year at my local track, the Kawasaki Race of Champions there. So I sent in a story.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was about, I think Nick Way was like the Team Green guy.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote I have to say, probably for a 20-year-old, really, really well done race report. Davey emails back and he's like, wow, thanks for that. And we don't pay for anything that we put on our website. Sorry, there's no money in it. And I'm like, wait, there would be pay?
Like, what do you so you're
What do you
saying
mean?
there's a chance?
Yeah. I'm like, of course there's no pay. I didn't know they ever paid. And he's like, no, if it gets in the magazine, we would pay. And I'm like, oh my God. So then I went to Unadilla that year, I think in 2000. I sent him a story on the first 6 nationals that year, assuming it would go nowhere. The guy Brian emails back and he's like, hey man, we're going to give you a feature story in the next issue of the magazine. And I'm like, what? So then like 3 months later, a magazine comes out. It's got my name in the byline.
Mm-hmm.
This is summer of 2000. So I was set to graduate college right around that time. And I was like, this is it. Now in 2000, the economy was roaring. I could have gotten a job. I got a job, degree in communications. I could have got a job. No problem. I could have moved to New York City or Philadelphia, the nearer towns to me, and got a corporate job for the rest of my life. But I'm like, well, I got this shot once. So I'm going to fake going back to college for graduate school. I'll pretend I was in no need to get a master's degree, but I'm like, I'm going to take one more year in college just so I can keep going to races and keep sending them stories, and maybe it'll lead somewhere. And if it doesn't, I'll get a job next year.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, we had like 3% unemployment rate year 2000. We were killing it. It was not a problem going to get a job. So, yeah, I spent like 2001 just driving every race I could get to, sending them stories every week for the website, which they did not pay for. Indy Supercross 2002, Davey finally says like, hey, we're hiring. We're going to start a quad magazine. You know anything about quads? And I'm like, I had quads growing up. Then he didn't really respond after that. I'm like, I got a job. And then every week I'd email him and he'd be like, we're not ready yet. I think he was actually hammered. He never really intended to do this. I didn't know. So I was just hanging on by a thread month after month after month. And then finally this is 01. The end of 01, the next to last national, I'm there. It's Broome, Tioga. It's close to my house. And he's like, hey, you want to move to Morgantown? We got an opening for you. Help us out at Steel City next weekend. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, meet at our office Monday morning. I'll have keys to an apartment. So I drove home from Binghamton Sunday night, packed up my stuff, was on the road Monday. Had no idea what the job was going to be or what it was going to pay or anything. Davey gave me an apartment. I've told this story a few times. I worked there. I didn't get paid till December. I showed up, and everybody was like, who is this guy? Why is he here?
Yeah.
And especially Davey's mom, who owns the company. She's like, why are you here? And Davey's like, you got to get in my mom's good side. I'm like, yeah, how? And he's like, she runs the GNCC races. Go to those. Do something there. So I started writing the cycle news stories and shooting photos of those. No one is trying to shoot photos of the ATV woods races, trust me. Mm-hmm. But no one was doing it, so I could do whatever I wanted. I could do videos, I could do photos, I could do stories. Eventually they interviewed me as the journalist guy, and Rodney Tomlin, give him credit, the announcer, he's like, hey, you speak real well, you want to do it every week? And I'm like, all right, every Saturday morning, let's talk quads. Every Sunday morning, let's talk bikes. Then eventually he's like, you want to just give me a break and talk for an hour? The next thing you know, we're the co-announcers. And then by 2003, the series gets a television deal, and the television producers are like, you're the only guy on earth that knows anything. Can you send us notes? Can you answer our questions? We don't know these riders. We don't know anything about woods racing. And then after a while, they're like, you know what would be easier than you sending us the notes? Do you want to just do it? You want to just do the TV show? And I'm like, yep. And they're like, we'll pay you $1,000 per show.
Wow.
They never actually paid. That was $26,000. I was like, it's time for a down payment on a house.
Oh, man.
Point is, I say this to kids all the time when they're like, how'd you get where you got? And I'm like, dude, I did the work no one wanted to do.
Yeah.
I just drove to Supercrosses and sent RacerX stories, never expecting to get paid, never expecting to get published. I was lucky it was the early days of the internet, so there was a huge, like, all of a sudden it went from, we only have 12 magazines a year to we have unlimited space.
Yeah,
it's the internet.
Boom. Major boom.
We need stuff.
Yeah.
Anything you could send, we appreciate. And then I always say, I started announcing quad races in the woods, and that's where the young people usually walk away and say, well, if that's what it takes, I'm out.
Yeah,
and I'm like, but look, like, it's the same company. That's RacerX and MX Sports also run GNCC.
Yeah.
The roadmap was obvious. And the reason I wanted to work for Davey so bad is Davey ran a magazine, and Davey was on TV at the time. And I'm like, well, if I meet this guy, he's got connections in every part of media. If I meet him and impress him, it'll probably work out.
Yeah.
And that's literally what happened.
That's so rad.
Yeah. You just, I don't know. It's called betting on yourself.
Yeah, you have to. And it's crazy to think that a lot of people hesitate to do that.
Yes, it's frustrating actually.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect me, but you probably know stories like that too, like people that you know have a talent.
Yeah.
And like one of my buddies from high school, he's like one of the wittiest, sharpest, gnarliest, heartless insult dudes ever. I don't know where you find your outlet for that. But he got an internship with Saturday Night Live.
Beautiful.
And he did his internship. And he's like, when it was over, I'm like, what are you going to do? He's like, well, dude, what am I going to do? Like, crash with 3 dudes in like a studio apartment in Manhattan and try to scrape it together? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, that's what you have to.
And he didn't want to do that. I'm like, I know it's going to suck, but that's it. This is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
You either ain't going to do it or you got to do it this way. And it's so frustrating that he didn't do that. And I was like, dude, my job sucked when I started. They weren't even paying me. I didn't even know what I was doing. People were giving me mean mug every day, like, why are you even here?
Yeah.
It was not enjoyable at all. But I was like, if I turn back, they opened the door. If I turn back now, I will spend the rest of my life saying I was this close and I left.
Yeah.
And whatever. I was in my 20s. So big deal. I start over at 25.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing to lose.
What a lot of people don't realize in your early 20s, everybo's going to mean mug you no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, anyway.
Nobody cares.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You're some kid that, and what's tough is, at least I could, speaking for myself, I thought I knew everything.
Yes.
I was so sure.
Yes.
And fortunately for me, the kind of the path that I took, I could tell myself that and make a lot of progress shamelessly.
Yeah.
And I never questioned myself, and that's where I made up the most ground was through my 20s.
So it paid off. That mentality paid off.
It's almost, and I think that's something to be said for like a lot of racers and stuff. these kids, when they go from amateur and then they're just starting to pro, like pro-am and then real pro.
Yeah.
It's that adolescence and puberty and just like that really confusing time in their life.
Yes.
That the fact that they're so involved and wrapped up in something, it's the best thing. It's the best timing. But it could also be the most frustrating thing if you have to if it's a kid that takes a lot of coaching.
Yeah.
Good luck getting anything to stick. Because
Yes.
having the capacity to apply it's really rare. And you see that. I mean, I would imagine before we get into talking about riding, I would imagine a guy like Jet or a guy like Hayden Deegan. Those guys are very. They seem to be from the outside looking in very coachable. And then you have other guys that have a lot of talent that are a little bit older, or they have speed, and they make the same mistake that you see over and over. That is unfortunate because they have the potential, but
dealing
it's
with
so hard to put
17-year-olds
together.
or 12-year-olds or 22-year-olds. Yeah, it seems so obvious, right? Just do what someone knowledgeable tells you to do, but
it's
you
hard
remember
to
what it was
apply.
like at that age?
Yeah,
you were very stubborn, I'm sure.
I grew up. So I grew up wrestling, and I had great coaches, great coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime my biggest issue at that age is I wanted to be the guy so bad.
Yeah.
And so when I got involved in wrestling, I always wanted to do something flashy. Like I had more heart than pretty much anybody. I felt, and it would get me pretty far in the match, and I would be doing good. And I wanted to do something flashy that everybody was like, "Wow!" and they talked about it. And anytime I would take that risk, I would completely just throw it away. Yeah, I'd pin myself. I would just get like. There would be a big points change where there was a takedown and a near fall, and I would end up losing the match because of a stupid decision that I made.
How did the coach feel about this? Serious?
You drive me to cuss, boy.
Yeah,
he used to always tell me that, and he would just tell me, he's like, you're good, but you're never going to be great unless you listen to your coaches. And in that, he could tell me a game plan, and I could repeat it back to him, and in the heat of the moment, it would go out the door. And it wasn't until late in my wrestling career that I just had the discipline of sticking to the plan and the fundamentals and doing a good job. And I had the best results because of that. And I'm grateful that I experienced that, but it always stuck with me because I never did as good as I could have. Yeah. And so and then you lose that chance, right? You go to college and then you make a decision. Do you want to do it in college or not?
Yeah.
And I made the decision that I wanted to be social, and I was sick of school and all this stuff. So I got a motorcycle, and it ended up working out in the long run.
Yeah.
But the issue was I always have it in the back of my mind that I'm a failure. I didn't do what I set out to do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But everybody is an accumulation of failures, of chances that are taken, right?
Yep.
And so you take those chances and you got to live with it, but living with it gives you something in your toolbox to reference when you have something else coming up where there's a lot on the line. You have to look back and ask yourself, do you want to make those same mistakes? So you better learn from it, is what I'm saying.
It's honestly the only way to stay sane, because I think anyone, I'm going to assume, look, we underrate ourselves in this paddock. We are just people doing our jobs, but most of us are one of the few that's doing it. Your job, there's not 1,000 guys doing it. My job, there's not 1,000 guys doing it. The photographer's back here working behind us, same thing.
Yeah.
Like, we're all kind of a leader, or whatever you want to call it, in some way. You don't get there without a lot of ambition.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you're that ambitious and you do mess up, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like, we are not punch the clock 9 to 5 jobs that we don't care about.
No.
Like, there's a passion in this pit.
That's something that I think about that all the time, where so for people listening, without going into crazy detail with it, I change tires for Dunlop motorcycle tires. So I show up at the race, I put the tires on, make sure nothing's flat, everything's mechanically sound, and I send it off, and I help that company with that, so that way they can provide their trackside service. So that's anybody from a privateer, sometimes like today we had the combine, so the amateur riders that are coming up, we did their wheels and whatnot. But that also means Eli Tomac and Dungy when he was still racing, and Reed when he was racing. All of those guys, we touch all their equipment. And so if you make a mistake, that's on you.
Oh, it's terrible.
And it's, technically it's like mistakes happen every once in a while, and we do a pretty good job of making sure that doesn't happen. That's why we still do it by hand, and there's a process that we have to make sure that everything we send out is perfect every time.
Yep.
And we work well with teams where the teams are aware they have a certain process that they go over before the bike even gets off the stand to go to the track. So everything, if there's been mistakes that have been made in the past in my time, it's been caught before it even gets onto the track, which is pretty awesome.
Yes.
A funny story though, one of my early years, it was when Anderson was leading the points going into Salt Lake City.
Oh yeah.
So this is 2018.
Yeah.
And what had happened was I just happened to get all of his equipment for the day. Like, we work ahead of time. There's preparation on Thursday. Friday is our busy day. That's when we go and change majority of the tires. And then race day, it's kind of just upkeep and maintenance. Race day is usually the easy day. Everything in professional racing is preparation during the week and showing up and doing your job on the weekend. The weekend should be easy.
Yeah.
So I happen to get all of his equipment, and you treat it like any other day. You don't think any different of it, but you double check everything, and it's all good. You do the same thing over and over. It's the repetition, and if you do it thousands of times, you'll eventually be an expert at it.
Yeah.
Right. So I go and I do his stuff, and it goes together. But I had it in the back of my mind. Hey, I worked on his stuff, and I like to watch from the floor, but that's one of those races that. I don't know what you think of the floor space over at Rice Eccles, but it's pretty tight, and it gets scary. Really dusty. That's the other thing. It could get very dusty very quickly.
Friday this year was horrible.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's one that's worth watching from the stands. Well, at the time, the industry seating was above the mechanics area. So you can't see the mechanics. You just see the. I think the gate drop was right there. I can't recall where the gate was, but I know the mechanics area
is the main event.
This is the main event.
Oh, I know where you're going with this. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Yes. So then the race starts, and there's a big tangle up in the first corner and everything, and then Jason's just he's in terrible position, and I think he does he limps it like one lap.
Yes.
Maybe two. I don't even think he did 2 laps, but I see him come in, and he's freaking out, pointing at his front wheel, and I specifically remember doing his front wheel, and my heart just. Fell out of me, and I was so nervous, and I just started sweating, and I was still a new guy at the time, and all I could think is like, they're going to be so mad at me. I'm done. I'm done.
You ruined his championship.
That's all
is
I
what
could
you're
think.
Thinking.
That's 100% what I was thinking, and I was trying to watch the monitor, and you could see on the jumbotron, and they're changing his wheel out, and he's pacing, and he's all shook up, and I remember. My phone started blowing up because all my friends back home.
Oh no!
They stay on top of it. I got some diehard friends back home, and my buddy Will Lakovich texted me, and he said, "Oh my God, his spokes are so jacked." And what had happened was he ended up, I think his foot peg or Dino's foot peg. He got his front wheel into Dino's foot peg. I think is what it was.
Yeah.
And he blew the spokes out. The tire was still on. I actually pulled the tire off that wheel.
Or busted wheel.
Yeah, it was either me or Brian, but I was there, and I put hands on it to make sure.
It was not the tire.
Dude.
Oh.
That was one of the times where it's just so nerve-wracking, and that I only got one job, make sure, hey, they're not flat, are they? No, they're good.
Yeah.
And
let's be honest, that position you were in, that is I feel like when an engine blows up, people are like, that's part of racing, man. You never know. We're pushing it.
Oh, dude.
Or if a guy crashes and the bike breaks. But, I feel like there are certain things they just expect 100% of the time it should always work. And
Correct.
I think that's one of them.
Yeah.
Your spot is they would not accept, hey, man, I messed up. That is not an acceptable answer.
I think I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And I think the times that there was a potential for something that could have been caught as a mistake, the teams have, just from what I've seen, pretty understand, but it's rare. I can't even, I can't, if I was to sit back and think, a significant mistake that's been made in my time, just under our tent, I really can't think of any,
But it's a tough combination because, again, so you're only doing this elite job that tons of people would like to do what you're doing or what I'm doing, and you're only doing it because the passion is what got you here.
100%.
The drive. But then also, man, when you do something you regret, or we're harder on ourselves, I would believe, than people who don't care. I always say the racers probably don't understand when I'm explaining this to them, but you'll get it later in life. Having great ambition is an awesome thing in life. Not being lazy, wanting to work hard, wanting to achieve goals, that is a great thing in life. But it comes with some side effects, which is you never truly feel satisfied.
Never.
You never feel like you did it.
Yeah.
And that's a tough thing to live with. And then if you actually, even when you do well, you feel that way. Then if you actually mess up or don't achieve your goals, it's way harder on people like us than people who just don't care. Sometimes not caring would actually be nice, but we don't know how to do that.
There's a certain amount of that, though, that I see a lot of times when people don't care, they take a lot more risk. Like, I'll overthink it. I'll overthink it. Yep. And I see other times where people don't really think about it at all, or at least on the outside, it doesn't seem like they do. Yep. And they'll go, and next thing you know, they're doing it. Yeah. And I kick myself. I live my life that way, where I'm just like, man, I should try something like that, you know. And it's so nerve wracking. But when I was younger, I used to really, I'll be a big old hater, man, big time, all jealous
of other people's success.
Oh, 100%.
Really? It does happen.
Yeah. I would be that way all the time, and I would, because I grew up pretty cocky, I would say. Because I'm very competitive. Very competitive. And so then I would think to myself, like, well, I could do that, or I could do it. Why am I not doing that? And then, but one thing, what's nice is, looking back, I was raised to be very accountable, you know, and so as quick as I would start hating on something, I would immediately punk myself into, well, you're not doing it. So unless you're going to go do it, shut up. Right. And I would just bully myself into either doing it or moving on, you know, and as I get older, the bigger thing is that I don't let it rile me up so much, and I try to be positive and really give credit. You always give credit where it's due, but show an appreciation for somebody that goes out and does it, even if it's something you would like to be doing. Yes. Like give good energy to them and say, hey, you know what, good job, I appreciate that. And that's something with this, like sitting down to do this, right? It's so easy for me to look at what you do and think, I could do that. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And then I go to try to put this together. I'm like, this is insane how much work just goes into this. And then, God forbid, you put video on top of it.
Oh, I know.
You know, and then I look at like Tom Jernett and Bub and Abel, Lannon, and I look at all those. I'm like, you guys are savages. I don't know how you keep up with it. Like the amount of content those guys push out. Yep. It's insane. All of these media guys, and then you see these young kids coming in that. They're like a young you know, or a young video guy. They're just showing up, spent the last dollar to get here, and they're hoping that someone likes their pictures. And
but you know, it's the same thing. We just do it, and that's where I'm saying we take for granted. We just think of it as a job at this point. I mean, we love what we do, but it is eventually you're at the point where it is now your job. It is how you make a living. It is a job, but you forget I don't even get nervous when I do these TV shows. I'm doing 5 hours live on TV, and it doesn't even make me nervous one bit. Yeah. Like, I would never get a tire ride. I could not do one. I could not do it. Like you're saying with these guys, output these media dudes behind us here, but they've done it so many times. I always tell a story. Chad Reed's last year racing Supercross, he had a day, I think, where his bike broke in both practices and barely had ridden the track. And then he whole shot the heat race. And I was like, hey, how did you even know to go like double 3-3-2 in that rhythm, which you had never even done before, and you're leading and you've got 20 guys behind you? And he's like, it's like driving a car 70 miles on an interstate. Like, you would think that's hard, but after a while, it's not hard anymore. So for him, doing something that maybe a couple hundred people could maybe do, how many people could even jump that rhythm? 100 people? 200 people? For him, it wasn't even hard. Even without practice, he didn't even think, ooh, this is going to be sketch. I haven't even jumped this yet, and I'm leading a race. It didn't even occur to him that was difficult. Yeah. So for you, when a tire shows up, which most dads don't want to deal with, it doesn't even occur to you that it's difficult. Or the work output, these video dudes behind us, they just do it. Yeah. You think they're like, man, how am I going to get this all done? Every Friday's like that. No. Yeah. So we are a little elite. I don't think we realize it because we're just doing our jobs. But yeah, most people, if you try to, it probably would seem easy on the outside. Oh my God, the amount of people that want to be video dudes, I think I could probably bust this out. But when you actually have to do it and you can't screw it up, that's really what it comes down to. You can't be like, camera didn't work today, sorry, I don't have a video. Like, that's not acceptable. If your tire actually is wrong, that's not acceptable. Yeah. I can't mess up during the 5 hours. You can't mess up. When you throw that element and the time crunch, it is a lot harder. To us, it's normal. But yeah, I'm sure there's people on the outside that want to do it and think they probably could. I like, though, that you hold yourself accountable. I think a lot of people, if they didn't reach their goals, would find some excuse where someone had an unfair advantage. You will at least put it on yourself.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Everybody's has an advantage. Yeah. That doesn't matter. That I get so sick of hearing anybody talk that way.
Yeah.
Because so what? What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, that's just reality. Yeah. Get better.
Strip it back to caveman days.
Yeah.
That guy's bigger. He wants your bone. You want the bone, or is he going to get the bone?
That's good.
You know what I mean?
You got to get
like
it.
that's
Yeah.
it. There's no that doesn't even pop up on my radar. You know.
That's impressive, because I think when you are competitive and then you get jealous for the 20 minutes, the first thing half the people do is feel like that person doesn't deserve it, and you do, and then you're not accountable at all.
You're just what I've come to realize is that's me really hating a part of myself. Is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you got to have both. You can't. If you weren't competitive, you wouldn't be successful.
Yeah,
so you can't turn it off.
But that's what I'm getting at. Is as far as the way that the math adds up.
Yeah,
it's me hating that scared part of myself that it is too scared of what other people are going to think. Not even that, because to be honest, when I think beyond that thought, okay, what if that guy right there thinks I'm stupid?
Yeah.
If you told me, hey, that guy thinks you're stupid, do you think I really care? But the idea of it,
yes,
it scares me in that moment. But I think beyond that, I don't dude. I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
What it's more so the rejection. I think is the scary part.
Yep.
But then again, I've been around this enough to the amount of support. When I brought up, hey, I want to sit down and have a couple conversations with some people.
Yeah.
The amount of support that I got was really, it was almost like a little milestone for me. That I would even get the time of day. Number one, that I'm sitting across from someone like you, or talking to this guy over here that's enthusiastic about doing it. And I know I just saw this guy, not want to do another one or whatever.
Yeah.
And just like, to me, it made me feel really. Pretty nice, because it is repetitive, where we're 30 weekends out of the year getting on a plane, showing up, you're away from family, all that stuff, and it's very easy to get in a funk. And it's very easy, you almost don't get time to digest it. And so
for sure.
If you carry that with you, you can definitely be your own worst enemy. You know what I mean? And if you let that happen, you got to remember, that's you letting it happen. Right, so you have to switch something up.
Yep.
And so when I went and brought this up, like for you, for example, like the fact that you take the time of day, like, that sounds really cool. Let's do it. That's awesome. I would love to do it. That to me is like, that's cool. Because if I came out here and I was acting like a cool guy or a punk or this or that, you have no time for that. You, out of anybody's probably the busiest guy in the whole paddock. Because it's not only that's
Friday night's okay. Friday night's okay.
But that's the other thing people don't realize. It's like, you do this, you've done some dirt track,
I did road racing.
Yeah,
yes.
you've done a ton. Like, what was your? Let's go back to that. What was your schedule like last year?
Yeah, well, that was even too much. Like, look, I've said it. Like, if I didn't have family at home, I'd go to races 52 weeks a year. Like, I don't mind flying. I don't mind travel. I don't mind any of that. I'm never burned out. I'm never like, I need a vacation. Like, I'm fine with all that. The regret is always what you leave behind when you leave, always. So that's fine. In 2020, heck, a lot of us probably figured maybe we're never going to work another day in our lives. Like, what if these races never come back? So I was scratching and clawing for anything I could. Half the series were gone or didn't come back. And then by 21, because of that, I had gotten new stuff. And then by last year, everything was back. So I grabbed new things and old things that were all back online. Yeah, last year was too much. I think I did 22 weekends in a row, May through October or something like that.
Wow.
That's half the year.
Yeah.
And, I work during the week. I'm running the RaceTracks website. So that's 22 straight weeks without a day off of work. That's the key in this industry. You're working 7 days. There's no comp days because you were at the race Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
So that's, whatever that is, that's 6 straight months without a day off. That was a little bit too much, but that was just survival mode of like, well, I'm going to go into road racing if they call, because who knows, man, we might never work again. I got to take every gig that's out there. So that is different, because I did not follow road racing, like, literally at all, man. Like, at all. I faked my way in. You got to do that sometimes. If veteran TV people have told me, no matter what they ask you to do, you always say, you know it, you can handle it, no problem. That is always the answer. It might be true or it might not be true. You've got to say yes. And even if you got only 24 hours, you got to figure it out because you will never potentially get that call again. You have to always say yes.
Yeah.
So that was it. One of the road race people called me. This would have been 2021 and said, like, you want to do this race in Virginia? And I'm like, yeah, motorcycling. Yeah, I know what's up. I'd never watched a Moto America race in my life.
Oh,
I think I knew Cameron Bobier was last year's champ.
Yeah.
He wasn't even racing anymore. He moved to Europe. That was all I knew.
Wow.
And I was like, I got 3 or 4 days. So I just remember sitting on an exercise bike, watching like 8 to 10 hours of footage every day, doing my Racer X stuff as much as I could on the side while I'm watching. And I knew enough to fake it through that weekend. And then at the end of the weekend, I was like, dude, I didn't know anything about this on Tuesday. It all started Wednesday. But that's what you have to do in this job. And you just take it for granted. Like I said, like this is just what we do. It probably is crazy when you look at it that way. But that's just part of the job. Like if the stack of tires you had on Thursday, it probably looks crazy. Not to you, not to me. So that's just how we do it. But the fear of failure, that is the one thing I have to say, man. I'm never worried about that when I'm in my zone. Like not changing tires, not working on motorcycles, not riding. But if somebody's going to call me to do a TV thing, I'm just like, hey, it's opportunity. It's not, oh, what if I mess this up? I was, even when I was sending stuff to Davey for Racer X, I was never worried that I wouldn't write well enough to get it. It was just, I need the opportunity. If I get it, I'm confident that my skills are good enough to get the job. That's hard. I guess that fear of failure, either I don't have it or I thought I had, I don't know. But I never had to worry about that part.
The fear of failure for myself, fear of failure would be that I'm not going to make it. That overall, the big picture is going to be a failure.
Yeah, but think of it this way.
No. What I'm saying is it's not something like, if you ask me to do something, I'm not scared I'm going to mess that up. So I get what you're saying there. The big thing is if I don't find a way to get that opportunity, if I don't put myself at the right place at the right time, if I'm banking on something and I can't bank that it's going to work out,
and that's a lot of things.
And that's what has, like, if I could describe how I feel about stuff sometimes, like if I'm laying down, there's two things that happen. When I lay down in bed, I look at the ceiling, I think of where I'm at, what I'm doing, right? And I ask myself, are you making a difference? That's one thing. Are you having a positive impact or positive impact? That's a big thing. But the major thing is going to be, where are you going to go? How are you going to get there? Like, what do you want? What are you trying to get to? The other part of it is the fear of all of it being taken away.
Oh, right? It's scary.
So failing that. So I end up feeling like Indiana Jones running from that rolling boulder. Yeah, that's how I feel, you know. But that's the cadence of my lifestyle and where currently where I've been there for a while. It's been that way for a while. Because
you got to remember, man, you would regret more. I didn't get it because I didn't try.
Oh, for sure.
Then I tried hard.
1,000%.
When you're ambitious and you try hard and you don't get it, it hurts bad. But I know always it would have hurt worse to have not tried it.
1,000%.
And that's what in the moment, it still sucks. Like, I've lost more gigs than I've gotten. Yeah. I've not gotten more gigs that I wanted than did get gigs that I wanted. I mean, I've been waiting 15 years now to be a part of Supercross. It only happened this year.
Yeah.
Like, from 2010-ish through 2013 or 2023, 13 years, I was out. I've been waiting 13 years. It hurt. Every week. I probably thought about it every day. Why can I not be a part of Supercross? But it would have been worse if I knew that I sabotaged myself or didn't try hard enough or I screwed something up. Yes, so much is luck and circumstances and all that. Just think of how much worse you would feel, though, if you had the perfect circumstance and you were the one that actually didn't try or messed it up.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I don't allow that. I can't.
No.
I couldn't. I couldn't live with myself.
No, that's even worse. But it's hard. That's the overall thing I say all the time. Being ambitious is great, mostly, but it brings the competitiveness, and it's hard to deal with that sometimes.
Yeah.
It brings out the worst in you. Like you said, you could call it. It is jealousy in a way.
Oh, for sure.
You want to succeed, and every racer out here, even when they get second, they want to win, right?
Yeah.
I tell them all the time, like, dude, you're a factory paid motorcycle rider, but I bet you don't feel that way.
Care
They don't care
at all.
No, the
that
result.
guy's in front of me.
100%.
Yeah, that's when we would have our wrestling tournaments. The worst medal you could get is a second place medal.
No way.
Throw them in the trash. You don't keep them.
No way.
You don't keep them.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
and it's just like, and I remember old timers would tell us like, hey, like a big tournament.
Yeah.
You took second.
Yeah.
Like I look at it as like you lost in front of everybody. Like you failed, right? And then I remember an old timer telling me like, hey, you should probably keep this. I know you don't want it now.
Nice.
But it'll mean something later on. You know, and it's just like
Yes.
that's nice stuff. And looking back, it still don't mean shit to me today. But
but if you had a
the idea of it,
yeah.
that moment meant something to me because that moment helps me bring it back together. You know, and not get so far out in the weeds or caught up in your emotions. But
it sucks because you could tell somebody, hey, I was second. How good were you? Oh, I was second in some huge tournament, and it'd be like, damn, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But could you? No, at the time. Can you be both? The only way to win is to feel like second is trash. If you turned it off and you were able to be cool with getting second, would you be as good?
No.
Right?
No.
You have to be that
not.
way.
So
you have to almost, not torture is probably too strong a word, but you can't enjoy the moment.
There's I mean, we can end up out in the weeds with it, but
Yeah.
I feel that there's it's just something in human nature.
Yeah.
Not in everybody, but
No,
if you
definitely
take
not.
a population, I
Yeah.
think a significant amount. There's something in us for competition but almost to a primitive level to where it's war or conquering or taking
Yes,
over.
yes.
I think that exists.
That's why we have
And-
sports.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's civilized.
And it's the same thing where
Yeah.
whatever is happening, if you could be into anything. Anybody who's really great at one specific thing,
Yeah.
they're all psychos. They're
Yeah.
all crazy.
Yeah.
And they'd be great people. They could be mean people. They could be whatever. But when it comes to competition,
Yeah.
like everybody that I've seen that's great has this completely no holes barred, will die
Yeah.
to succeed mentality.
Yes.
And the really great ones, it still sticks with them going on in different ventures in life. So say if it was a famous racer and they won a lot of championships, and then they go on to something beyond racing, they still got that weird streak in them. You know,
it's
and
weird.
you could
And
see
it's
it get
hard.
tickled every once in a while,
Yeah.
and you're like, whoa, that's why you're good. You know, and I always used to kind of get offended by that when I was younger. I used to be like, why is this guy being a jerk? But as I get older, I feel myself softening up a little bit, and I could appreciate a guy that's got 20, 30 years my senior, and he still has that killer instinct. You know, my dad's a perfect example. I used to think my dad was too much of a hard ass.
Yeah.
You know, and my dad's 73, just turned 73, I think, and he's still scary.
Really?
He is. Yeah, he is. And I appreciated that about him because I'm slowing down up 34 right now, you know, and I can't imagine still having it at that
Double.
age. Yeah.
Double your
and
age.
It's crazy to see. But I mean, it's beautiful.
It
You know,
is.
it's really cool and I'm grateful for that and I wouldn't change, you know, my upbringing for anything because I think it's more valuable to get exposed to, within reason, get exposed to a lot. Even if it's a little gnarly, it's a little painful, and then be able to overcome that.
Yeah.
And if you have love and support around you, that helps a lot. But you got to have some adversity, you know, or you got to put some controlled adversity in your life to where you have to overcome something.
Yes.
You know, and if you don't do that, then it's very easy to get into that negative mindset. Like for me, I start hating on somebody. If I go to an MMA gym and spar a couple rounds or do a bunch of jiu-jitsu, or if I go ride my bicycle, you know, 300 miles a week or something, I got so much out of my system that I'm the kindest person you'll get to hang around, right? But if I have it all pent up, I'm just bitter
Yep.
and grumpy and I just like a crappy version of myself, you know? And
I always tell the racers, or something I've learned as I've got older is I think the fans always, as our job as journalists, they want to know what are the riders like. Now, it's gotten a lot easier for the riders to get their personality out there in a million ways.
Yeah.
But I always caution everybody now that I look back and I'm like, be careful judging anyone when they're in this 10 or 15 year part of their life or at the tip of the spear.
Absolutely.
Because that is not a real life. And if you judge them, the best example ever is Jeff Stanton, who's here parading around as the 50th celebration of Red Bud. I mean, he is the coolest guy ever now. And you talk to anyone, including himself in his racing days, he was not like that at all. So if anyone was judging 24-year-old trying to win a Supercross title, Jeff Stanton, and thinking that's the real guy, that wouldn't be true. Like, we want to know, these guys are celebrities in a way, right? So they want to know, what is he really like? And it's like, what he's really like, we won't know until he's 35. Because this fight or flight that they got to live with every day, it makes you weird. And like you said, you got to be a little psycho. Yeah. In that moment, at least. Yeah. Maybe they turn it off when they're 40, maybe. You
ever talk to Justin Barcia in person?
How
nice is he in person? In person, if he's not on the line. How is he in the pits? How would he be right now?
Well, what did you say about your coach would tell you something and you'd memorize it, and then as soon as you went into the match, it went away? I mean, that's what we're seeing there.
100%.
Yeah, you can't judge him when he's on the racetrack. Now, I think even some of the riders, even off the racetrack, 7 days a week, they're weird. Yeah. You know, Barcia's clearly one guy Tuesday afternoon or even Saturday afternoon, and then the Saturday night. Yeah. But they're all different when they're in the arena. Yeah. And you've got to respect that and don't judge them too harshly. Because I've seen Ryan Villopoto. Yeah. The guy was a miserable human being when he was racing. He's the coolest dude now. That's all that stuff weighing down on him at that time.
How gnarly was that? That's something I'd like to talk to him. And ask him that. But how gnarly was that? Remember when he had that kind of like that documentary come out with the Supercross season
about his dad? Stuff?
And then without getting too deep into it, but I will always distinctly remember a quote that he said where he looked straight in the camera. He's like, "I'll quit right now." Yeah, like this. Yeah. I am not having fun.
Yeah, and he eventually
did. The baddest dude in Supercross at that time.
Yep.
You know, and I always thought that it was at that time I wasn't in the pro side, so my perspective on it was a lot different. But part of me respected it, and the other part of me was like, "Damn, dude!" Like,
no, I agree, because I think the fans were like, "Dude, you are the Supercross champion, and you're making millions of dollars. I wish I could have what you have, and you're mad about it." But that's why I say you cannot judge the guys. Correct. Now you see Ryan Villopoto, and he is the happiest dude going. But that competitiveness it's a great thing in life, but it does bring weird side effects. Yeah. And he was miserable. I remember interviewing him, Houston Supercross, end of 2014. And I was like, I want to figure out why this guy is even doing this. He looks so miserable. Like, what is it that makes him... I was so fascinated by how could he be this good, not even want to be here, and then whip everybody's ass? How? To me, that is so wild. And you talk about these guys that are elite, they're psychos. They probably don't want people to know that, but I think that's fascinating. Like, when you hear a story of an elite athlete or some crazy soldier, you know, something that's so unique, and how unique they are, I think that's such a neat window into like how humans work, right? So I was so intrigued. I'm like, he doesn't want to be here, and he's kicking everybody's ass. How is that possible? Yeah. And I tried over and over, and I asked him, and he couldn't really give me an answer about what he even likes about this anymore. And I remember he finally said, he's like, "Hey, don't make me look like an asshole, man." And I'm like, you know what? Let's just scrap it. Yeah. There's nothing good going to come out of this interview. People don't like the fact that you have the greatest life that they want, and you don't like it. And you're just driving that point home more, where you can't find a single thing you even like about your job right now. And most people that give the best job in the world, in that moment, he couldn't. Now, 10 years later, happiest dude ever. Yeah. And that's when I started to realize, I'm like, you can't judge these guys at that moment.
And that's a big thing is you look at, I don't know how you would describe that aura that he was given off during that time. Like, I wasn't around it. I was a fan watching.
Yes, but you could tell he was miserable, right?
For sure. Yeah. Well, he was saying he was. Yeah. But the thing was, if looking at the big picture, look at how much he's contributing back to the sport. Yeah. You know, he's very hands-on. That guy, if I'm sitting at an airport, he'll go out of his way to say hello, and he's so rad. He's a rad dude.
He is.
And that's where. Not only that, but as much as he's helping different riders and helping coaching and giving insight, and a brand ambassador, and like, always willing to work with somebody, very reasonable. You could approach him, very approachable, right? Yep. And so if you look at the big picture, is not that you should really be judging, but you could take an assessment of somebody, right? Yes. And if you look at him, big picture, when he was a competitor, he was a competitor, a
Yeah.
fierce competitor.
Yeah.
And then when it was time to put that away, and he's able to let his guard down a little bit.
Yep.
Great human being.
Yep.
Great.
It took a
human
little while it didn't happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
I think it was like a year or two where we were like, oh, he's in the woods. You'll never see him at a race again.
being. Yeah.
But then I think he started to, now I get to do the good part, and I don't have to do the pressure part anymore. And then
Yeah.
you see the real person. Yeah, because there's this thing going for a while where they're like, why do these guys like Villopoto retire early? Is training too hard? Is the schedule too long? It's the pressure.
Well,
It's the pressure.
think of this too, where you're talking about if somebody's really ambitious
Yeah.
and they achieve something, right?
Yes.
And then they like think of a good example just for present day. If you look at Deegan and how Hayden and Brian kind of wanting to come in a little conservative to the year. This is a learning year.
Yeah.
You want to do the best you can,
Yep.
and hopefully that best you can is maybe you get a top 5, you
Yeah.
know, and you stay
Yeah.
on the bike, don't
Yep.
get hurt.
Yep.
And then kid gets like 4th his first race, I want to say it was.
Yeah.
And I think was that Houston.
Houston. Yep.
Yeah, he killed it and does well. Gets a podium, and
Doing
does
great.
really, really good. And then now you see him, that competitive side.
Oh
where
yeah.
he's
Even
he's getting
second
after.
is starting to get disappointing.
Right.
Yes.
And so it's something, as you achieve your goals, if you're ambitious, and that kid, the amount of work for him to do what he does,
Yeah.
a ton of hard work.
Oh,
had to
yeah.
that's
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what got him there, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Like a good guidance, and there's a lot of things in that recipe, but one thing that without a doubt he ain't scared to work,
No.
because it's evident in his style.
Yeah, you
And-
can see how he rides.
Yeah, and because of that, you see that work starting to pay off a little bit early on. But then that whole, hey, we're happy to be here. We're learning.
No.
Learning is we're learning what winning tastes like. You
Yeah,
know what I
and we
mean?
want
And then that's what we
Yes,
want. We're
yep.
learning that second isn't so good
Yes.
anymore. You know, and so that's what's really, it's something to kind of like. I want to use that as an example, maybe for a guy like Ryan, and maybe I could ask him one day. But you achieve greatness, you win these championships, and you get a lot of success. You get there, but if you're that ambitious, maybe it only feels good for a little bit, or it's not. You're never satisfied.
No.
You know, anybody like big entrepreneurs never satisfied. You know,
Nope.
they're always wanting to. That drive is what's.
Yeah, and it's a great thing to have, but it does, like I said, come with side effects. Yeah, so like if you tell me at 6 years old watching a race on TV that someday you're going to become the only guy who will be that position, you will be the television motocross announcer. I always said this isn't even a dream come true. That's not even a realistic dream.
Yeah.
That's not even, it wasn't like my high school yearbook, I said, hope to be motocross TV announcer. I mean, there's one of these jobs. That wasn't even realistic. So then I get there, but I'm telling you, very rarely did I ever even feel like I made it, because I was like, well, I got there. I was 30 years old when I started doing play-by-play. What I'm going to do, just then be stationary for the next 30 years? Like, then you want to find something else.
Yeah.
And then I really wanted to do Supercross. That door never opened. It frustrated me to no end. And then I moved to the Charlotte, North Carolina area, because that's where all TV racing announcers go. It's motorsports capital. So I'm there, and into 2014, NBC's about to get the NASCAR program back. It had been on ESPN. And one of the producers was like, where do you live? And I'm like, Charlotte area. He's like, would you want to do some NASCAR stuff? And I'm like, buddy, that's why I moved here. I was waiting for this phone call. Again, I knew very little about NASCAR. Watched every race, studied hours and hours a week. I had the XM radio NASCAR channel on. They didn't have podcasts yet. All day listening to this channel, watching old races, you name it. End of 2014, they asked me to interview a crew chief one day. Went okay. They called. They're like, you can do it. You can interview Jeff Gordon tomorrow at the Hall of Fame for the next round of the playoffs.
Oh, jeez.
And I'm like, and I remember going outside of my front porch, and I fist pumped. And it was the only time I truly felt, even when I got this gig, I never fist pumped, because it was still like, ooh, this is good. And there'll probably be more. When I got the NASCAR Jeff Gordon thing, I'm like, this might be it. This might be as high as I go, and I just got it. And then in 2015, they used me here and there. And then in 2016, they barely used me at all. And then they just never used me again. And it was a 2-ish year arc. I mean, the same people that I work with them at NBC, I still work with now. they're still cool with me. They still like me. It just didn't work out. I don't know why. I don't think they know why. Bottom line is, that killed me so much. Meanwhile, I'm doing the job. That was even better than anything I could have dreamed of as a kid. And I'm just still bummed that this NASCAR job that I didn't even grow up wanting, I didn't get. So there's your point. You just can't turn it off. You can't get to a certain point and say, I'm good. Well, then what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? It's insane. I never planned on working in NASCAR, and then for the fact that I didn't, which is only a bonus, drove me insane the last 12 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. But like you said, an entrepreneur, I know a guy who sold his company for $50 million, and he said, well, time to make it 100.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So it's a blessing and a curse, man. Imagine being lazy, though.
Oh.
Can you even imagine it?
I try to be. I try to be sometimes.
You
I
can.
do. I got a pretty sweet hammock. Lay there with my puppy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but there's time to be lazy.
Yeah.
But imagine when you have a job in front of you and half-assing it. Can you do it?
No, absolutely.
You can't do it?
No, you can't do that.
Nope.
You can't
do
do that.
Yes.
Yeah. That's like speaking to somebody. Are you going to talk like an idiot, or are you going to just shut up?
You would think, but I think a lot of people probably do it. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I know it. I don't want to compare myself to the racers. What they do is at a much higher level.
Mm-hmm.
But that level of drive, ambition, whatever, I can sense that in myself. It's the same thing you talk about. Like, we're not living their life, but I see where some of the weirdness comes from, and I respect that.
Yeah.
Because I know, A, it has to be there, and it's just, these are elite warriors, man. That's cool. We should celebrate the fact that it comes with some weird personality traits that makes them so good.
That's something I've always been drawn to, that too.
Yeah.
And that's why I respect all these guys that come out and do it. I mean, you got to remember too, like the last place guys out here,
oh, they're fast.
They still haul.
They do.
They haul. They might get lapped, but
Yeah.
I guarantee when you're back home, they blow your doors off. You know, and that's what's incredible. You know, and I'd like to talk to some of the technical people in our paddock about the things that they see happen to the bikes from these riders.
Yeah.
You know, there's rumors of subframes getting bent from without crashing.
No way.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like certain plugs in the like plastic parts that are connected to the motor just melting off and stuff because the equipment's getting used so hard. You know, or like why they have to a lot of the equipment, why it's built the way that it is, you know, if it kind of factory pieces and it's more for durability, because just what's going on with them. Like there's something to be said where I go back and forth with one of my friends about this, where I talk to some mechanics, and I'm not a mechanic, I'm not an engineer.
Yeah.
I hang around a lot of them, you know, and I pick their brain. I like learning about it, but I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
But where you ever hear where torque specs on a chassis make a big difference? Well, I go back and forth with one of my friends back home. He's like, no, that's not a slip joint. It doesn't work that way. It's a static joint, blah, 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 blah.
I've heard this argument both ways.
I'm not smart enough to fall on this side or this side, but all the people that I see that are doing it all say the same thing.
So you do hear people say torque specs do increase rigidity or
that they
versa.
matter. I hear that they matter, right? Yeah. And one of the justifications that I got with it was they just said, like, yeah, it might start off as a stationary static joint or solid joint, right?
Yeah.
But what these guys do to the bikes, that thing's oval, you know, within such and such hours, you know, and so that's where you hear about frames getting worn out and this and that, and just the amount of flex. Or if you watch slow-mo video of how often the bike, you know, if you can't see right now, I'm doing audio, but where if you look at the rear wheel and the front wheel and how off track they get from each other, where they pivot, where I'm trying to think of how to describe it, but they go like this,
left to right. Wow.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Where the bike flexes like that,
right?
You know, and how often that happens and what that does to the chassis, you know, and like I'd love to hear who found that happened, you know, like Marshall's a perfect example, like the things that they would have to fix back in the days with the two strokes.
And the reason this is so cool is because it's all elite. You're talking 1%. We're talking a human's never done
something that you and I would never encounter,
or no person ever has.
Yeah.
And this is the first time
they
were able to do this that any person did this to a motorcycle
Like,
on
what do you
Earth.
think
It's awesome.
Bubba did to 125s?
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think those bikes were like after?
I even heard John Tomac once told a story about how, like, you know, there's always rumors with, like, telemetry and Supercross, like, they use full throttle 18% of the lap, you know, something nuts. They're in the air so much and things like that.
Yeah.
But he told a story once of Eli working with some engineers, and it's like they didn't know you could hold a bike that wide open that much. Like, when they looked at the data, you know what I mean? Like, that is so cool. And that's no different than, you know, why it's fascinating when a 7-footer can dunk in basketball. Like, that you're seeing something that you know is, oh my gosh, everyone around is so elite and so good. They're all pros, and then this person is even a level above that.
Yeah.
That's what's so cool and fascinating. And obviously, you're getting it out here.
Yeah. And that's something like being on the floor or next to a berm somewhere at a race when, like, prime Eli is on it going by.
Yes.
And he's moving the earth around you.
It is.
And you can go down there on the floor. Anybody if you go to first of all, you got to go to a Supercross. If you haven't been to a Supercross, go.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
In practice, you could be in the stands, you could close your eyes, and you know which bike is Eli.
Yeah.
For sure. Every time. And then being down on the floor.
Yeah.
And when he's going by, it's just, you feel it in your chest. You feel it's almost like a wake of energy going by, you know, and that's one of those things. I think that's something that it's one thing to watch as a fan, you know, but why you see everybody in the paddock respect that guy.
Yes.
Is because they're around it. And we all know, you know, and it's incredible to see. And
it's gnarly.
Yeah.
Like, there's a gnarly, different guys can be fast in different ways, but that's just so, like,
that's a
scary,
man's
tough.
way.
Yeah,
that's a
of
man's
doing
way
it.
of
That's
going
a good
fast.
way of putting it.
You know,
Yes.
like, there's nobody when last year in outdoors, nobody ever went that fast on a modern 450 ever. Like, he was going the fastest anybody's ever gone. You know, what technology would allow.
Yes.
And then Chase would be right there.
Yeah.
Which is that was such a incredible season to watch, for Chase to step up to the plate as beautifully as he did.
Yeah.
And them to just have a all out, gloves off, freaking
and not
war
mess it up. No one went down
week.
at round 10 and blew it. Like, they went to the end.
Every week. And then with Chase, the times he tipped over or fell in the very end, I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to go down? Hey, I'm going to play it safe and I hope I don't crash. Or are you going to go out on your shield and try as hard, find the limit? If you ain't going to beat him, you better find the limit and just know, like, hey, I didn't have it or wasn't going to happen. But I tried my ass off. You know,
and
that was
Eli
something.
Tomac, dude.
And it was one of the few seasons where I'm getting chills just thinking about it. But when you look at, everybody remembers second place and first place in that season because of how incredible it was.
Yeah, I don't feel like anybody. It came down to the last race.
Yeah,
you know, you're like, oh, this is clutch pressure game 7 style. But I don't think anyone left there saying, like, Chase blew it.
No.
Chase caved. It was just like, they're both studs, dude. Somebody had to win, somebody had to lose.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone looked at it like Sexton lost.
Yeah.
It's just, he did the best you could possibly ever expect someone to do, but he got beat by Eli Tomac.
Did you ever pay attention at the races where the way, you know, when they come in all focused, race day?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like no friends, no nothing. It's all business, right? They come in pissed, is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And they race their ass off. We get to witness the most incredible battle, right? In person, and it's you're watching history happen. There's a moment that nothing in the world is happening like it is right in front of you in that moment. You're watching it take place, and you know it's going to be talked about. And these guys come off the track first and second, whether it was flip-flopped as Eli in first and Chase in second or vice versa.
Yeah. And
both are pissed because they leave and there's no difference in points leaving. You know, like they come into the round and then there's no points change. All that, like maybe Eli won the first moto and then took second in the second moto and then vice versa. You know, so it's the same amount of points. Like, this guy got the overall, but it means nothing.
Yes.
And they literally went to war.
Yeah.
Incredible battling. Incredible. And then they leave and it made no difference in the
it happened
championship
several times.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And these guys would leave, and they would leave that focus, that like they, whatever nerves, if you have them, whatever it is, like they don't feel any better going into the next round. It's like, well, that one's out of the way, but it's still, the same. I would ask Eli that every once in a while. I'd be like, do you feel any different leaving? He'd just be like, didn't have anything to say. Just,
No.
And it was just, it was in, and it wasn't like they weren't celebrating victory. It's like there's a big picture. The goal's the championship, and that was part of that intense kind of like, there's a big picture.
I think that the guys have gotten better. The mental side is obviously a big part of it, and you're trying to strip those barriers away. And what I think guys are trying to do, or maybe they've gotten better at doing, is to try to make it an unemotional thing. Like, not he beat me, is he better than me, am I better with him, all this confidence stuff. It's like, no, let's just talk about this turn. And how could you do this turn better? And if you could do this turn better, if your bike was better in this turn, or something like that, let's just make it mechanical, scientific. Because the mano-a-mano thing is, I think, where you really start getting in your head and chasing your tail. Is this guy better than me? Am I better than him? Is he nervous? Am I nervous? But I think the teams and riders are getting better at, let's just look at it as a numbers thing, as a data thing, as a robotic thing. Don't get inside your head. If you had done this corner better, you would have won. If you did it worse, you would have lost. Let's just think about the corner and the numbers and the miles per hour and the 0.2 of a second. Don't think of it as me against this guy, because that's a whole nother gnarly level.
I think that's case by case, though.
Some are better at it than others.
I think that's going to be some riders. Maybe they're very matter of fact.
Yeah.
And they can work with data.
Yeah.
And then some need a therapist or a psychologist with them.
Do you think some actually are like, no, man, I ride better if I like hate this particular guy or want to beat this particular guy, or I'm motivated to beat this particular guy. I don't want it to be just about me, my bike, and the track.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, so it's mixed.
Like I remember listening to Stuart and Ricky.
Yeah.
On Bubba's podcast.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that was a different era. I think everybody was cut from a different cloth in that era.
It was intense.
And there was a lot more mind games back then. Like I grew up, so I'm from Central California.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a town called Porterville, and that's real close. The big city by us is Fresno.
Okay.
There's an old pro named Rusty Holland.
Oh yeah.
That's from
Rollerball.
Yeah, everybody knows who Rusty is. Right? And that's what's awesome is, like, to this day, I'll never escape that guy.
I gotta know.
He's we're here at Red Bud right now, and everybody knows who Rusty is.
Oh yeah.
But
I think back then it was
what I'm getting
man against man, ego against ego. A lot of that.
And that's the thing. It's like that's another guy that I'm impressed that he still has that same kind of competitive drive. Like, he's still got it. He says he don't, but he's got it.
Who's this?
Rusty.
Oh, still.
Yeah, still.
Oh, okay.
But what I'm getting at is being around him, and being friends with him, and kind of seeing how he does stuff. Like, there was a lot of mind things that went into it. And then when you talk to different riders from that era or that raced him, they all talked. They all had the same fear. Like, guys that won championships. They were rookies when he was a seasoned vet. And they were like, I better beat this guy.
Yeah, he was gnarly.
You know what I mean? And that was something that that era.
Yeah.
Where the mind games or just the way you carried yourself, and that whole image, everything went in. A lot of things went into that. And when you hear guys at the tail end of that era, which would be Ricky and James, you hear him talk about that. It's a lot of the same thing. So to your point about trying to take that out and it being very data driven,
just science, just science, man.
And maybe that works for more people in this generation. But I think it's still something that's to the individual. Because there's you see how guys where they go from one program to another, and that this program is a winning program, and then they go to a different program, and they win there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it's
like
you
not
don't
like the other
know.
guy sucked.
Yeah, or it's not like this program over here was bad.
Yeah,
it's just like a change of scenery, and that brings you back into these guys are really talented, and a lot of it can be mental holding them back. Yeah. And sometimes and then chemistry. Here's a good example. This is an assumption that I make, and I this is just my assumption. This is my observation from behind my tire stand.
Okay.
If you look at Kenny going to Suzuki, he raced Suzuki a lot as an amateur and coming up, right?
Yep.
And then he had a lot of winning in Suzuki on with RCH in 2016. That whole era. I think he got hurt in 15 or jacked his ankle up or something like that.
Yep.
But he's got good chemistry with that bike.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of bikes, even if they change, like a Yam's still a Yam.
Yeah,
even if it's different, it's still
they do.
It's got its thing. You know what I mean?
Do.
There's a familiarity, and for him getting on a Suzuki, I mean that bike, those guys over at Twisted Tea, like Dustin and Aaron Pipes, all those that whole crew, they bust their ass doing the best that they can, trying to provide what they can, you know, and they need the right data, the right guy testing and helping out. There's a lot of work that went into that for them to learn the direction that it needs to go and to get the right riders, the right personnel, everything. And they've been doing that. Every year those guys are better, right? And you take a guy that's as talented as Kenny, and you could say whatever you want about that bike, right? And then Kenny goes out there and wins on it.
Yes.
Like, think about how long it took for him to get that other win. I think he won at St. Louis on Honda.
When he was coming back from injuries, it took like 2 years.
You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into winning a race. A lot. And there's some guys that make it look easy, but I promise you, ask anybody here. Think of the hardest thing you've ever done in your life, and if you think you're gonna die, you question everything, you confront yourself, you have to overcome all this stuff, and you just barely survive. And then that's an acceptable result. Like, that same amount of effort goes into trying to get a win for these guys every week. You know,
everybody you're racing, their whole lives have been dedicated to one thing. They're the most talented, and they've done the most work. They're all dedicated their entire life. It's not a hobby. It's not a side thing. Yeah. Their whole life has been about, how can I be the best at this thing? So when you have to beat every other person who's also dedicating every moment, every minute of their life is dedicated to this. It's not, he had to work a larger shift at the factory this week, so he's not ready. Yeah. Everybody's full time. Yeah. Yeah. So
and that's what I'm saying. You take that and you put Kenny on that bike. Yeah. Say what you want. The guy's got good chemistry with that particular bike. Yep. You know what I mean? And I think that's something to be said of why he has success there. He's absolutely the right guy to have on that bike. You know what I mean? So that's good chemistry with the program, with the bike itself, with the equipment, and then the rider. You know, and then if you look at what his equipment that he was on beforehand, you know, coming from Honda,
should be better.
Well, it's just it's proven equipment, right? Yeah. And we look at it today; it's still winning. During that time, while he's at Suzuki, it's still winning. You know, and it was winning when he was there. You know, so it's not. It's hard to quantify and say, oh, well, it was this or it was that. I mean, we won't ever know that unless you're part of that program and you know the ins and outs, which that's behind closed doors.
They wouldn't even know. Because but even the circumstances, you'll never know how much affects. Is it a better bike? Or he's an underdog or he's an overdog or there's less pressure. There's more. All these other things that affect the performance too, right? It's not a laboratory where it's a perfect circumstance. Like, Broxton shows up at High Point, the last race we had, and rides maybe better than he did at any outdoor last year. Yeah. But does that mean, well, this bike is way better? Maybe that track circumstance was perfect for him. Maybe the fact that he was showing up with no pressure right off the couch and was just having a good time, maybe that was a bigger factor than the bike. Or maybe the bike was big. You'll never know. Yeah. You never know. And that's what makes it so tough in all sorts of racing, I feel, because there isn't a formula. There isn't. Yeah. You know, you can make a bike more rigid or have more power, which should be better, but sometimes that's worse, right? It's all gray area of, is it better, but is it actually worse, and is worse actually better? You know, some riders would say having less power on a 450 is better than more, right? Figure out how difficult that would be to then figure out that formula. Well, that's a thing. I can't wait to talk to some. I talk to Marshall about this all the time, and he tells me he tells me about back in the day, the things that they would change in bikes to make them easier to ride. Yep. And that was the thing. Like, so he was saying sometimes, you know, a bike hits too hard, and so you had to tame it down a little bit. Yep. And then being
On the amateur side, you know, kind of coming up, trying to do amateur racing and everything, you always think more power.
Yes.
And or you need the bike stiffer. It needs to be this.
Yeah.
And it's like,
It's
no,
not
it
always
needs
better.
to be easier to ride for whatever level. You know,
Right.
it happens to be that the pros need a stiffer setup because of the load that they're putting on that.
Yeah.
And it needs to be able to hold up.
Yep.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that stiffer is better all the time for every application.
No. So what
And
a
then-
weirdo formula you got to put together where sometimes less is more, but
Yeah.
also sometimes more is more.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out those two
Yeah.
things. It's a never-ending quest.
That's what I always think is really cool with looking at teams that have been around for a long time or programs that have been around for a long time. Just the amount of data to know
Yes.
what direction
Yeah.
to go, the experience, you
Yep.
know, the personnel. Like, look at where I landed for my first gig in the pro side.
Oh my
I got
gosh.
Brian Fleck,
Yeah.
Marshall Plum, Brock Glover,
Yeah.
and I'm some 20-something-year-old
Yeah.
kid just
Three
trying to
most
keep up.
knowledgeable guys ever.
That's like 200 years of experience
Yeah,
in
yeah.
one tent. You
Yeah,
know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
And how God knows how many
Yep.
championships. You know.
Yep.
And to go and work with them, and just learn and be a sponge. You know, and that's the biggest thing is especially Marshall. He's always kind of protected me from myself. You know, make sure I'm not too big of a knucklehead. But it nudges me when I should be paying attention.
Yeah.
You know, and you just learn. And that's the big thing. Like, my favorite thing to do, being here at the races, it's to see people do well. That's number one. But number two is just to learn.
Yeah.
That I love that. And seeing people do well where like Talon Hawkins came in. I think his first race was Houston.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think he
filled
got
in.
11th
Yeah.
there.
That's pretty good.
And
Those are supposed to be doing that.
Correct.
Yeah.
He filled in, right?
Yeah.
And I remember he's sitting on the hay bale, and he just, like, everybody, when they come off the track, they like immediately go back to their rig, and they
Yeah.
want to, like, disappear. He took his helmet off, and he sat down there by a hay bale by the start gate, and he's just sitting there soaking it all in. He's sweating and everything.
wow.
And I was like, what do you think of Supercross? He, barely any words. He's, dude, it's awesome.
Nice.
You know, he was all jazzed and stoked. And but like, just seeing that kid as an amateur coming up get kind of thrown in the deep end early
Yeah, he
on.
did.
Got to step up, kid.
Yep.
And then to go and have something. That's a cool moment. You know, I'll always remember that. Whatever success is ahead of him,
Yeah.
you know, there's more to come for that kid. But that's a cool moment in time to see where he's at, and then eventually, you know, maybe he has a little adversity or has to overcome something or get to the next level, you
Yeah.
know, that kind of stuff, and
Yep.
see how his path goes, you know, because you get, it's so easy to be critical of somebody's riding and just watching a race, right? Why didn't you
Yeah.
do this? Why didn't that guy? Oh, this guy's waxing you or whatever. But I mean, they're all kids on a bike.
Hey, it's like you said about wrestling,
You
man.
know what I mean?
You could tell the coach can say all he wants.
Yeah, and
At some point, you're in the arena.
yeah, and but what I'm saying is, it's a person like that. The kid, if anybody
Yeah.
like, but I guess shout out to Talon Hawkins. If anybody ever comes to a professional race, go talk to that kid. He's a great kid.
Oh,
He's
unbelievable.
awesome.
Unbelievable.
He's really cool.
personality.
Yeah, so and that's what I'm saying. It's like, you want to see people like that do good.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, and I don't know everybody here. You know, I talk to a fair amount.
Mhm.
You know, but most of the people are like that. They're
Yeah.
they're really rad. How rad was it to see Zacho pick up a MX championship, Premier Class MX championship?
Oh, people are rooting for that.
You
for
know what
sure.
I'm saying?
Yes.
And like that,
Yeah.
that's another one. Like
Yeah.
getting to see that kind of stuff, or even a dude like Ferrandis. You know, to come from Europe and just
Yep.
say, listen, you know, we're moving here and we're going to work our ass
Yep.
off and we're going to win, and then to get it.
Yep.
You know, and do it in dominant fashion. The times where he was on top, like,
Oh, yeah.
that was the man. You know,
Yep.
that kind of stuff. It's really cool to witness.
The learning thing,
You know.
you enjoy it because, again, when you're this ambitious, at least, like, this is what I tell myself. When I mess something up, and I'm talking like, dude, I'm like this 24/7 with everything I'm doing. Like, if I could have filled that trash bag a little bit more, like, I emptied the trash bag from the house, but there was one trash can that I left behind and didn't put in there, and I could have made that run to the trash more efficient. I even get mad at myself for that stuff.
Yeah.
But then, when the only thing calms me down is I'm like, oh, but now I just taught myself next time to always look at the other trash can. And then I get this sense of calm of like, oh, but I failed, but I learned something.
Yeah.
These are all the ways you
Yeah.
have to cope with being ambitious.
Yeah, and
so the learning makes it okay even if you messed up.
And that's a big thing with like a good example going back to a guy like Marshall, right?
Yeah.
The amount of experience. Well, I mean that whole crew, I should say. The amount of experience that those guys have.
Yeah.
I'm never going to achieve that. Like I'm not in that circumstance. That's not the hand that I've dealt for myself.
Yeah.
I'm here to show up, change tires, to make sure equipment's mechanically sound.
Yeah.
Guys are ready to rip. Perfect. That's what I'm there for. But to learn from those guys, that's the opportunity that I have. You know, is like I'm not a factory mechanic.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not building bikes at PC. If I was doing that, I'd be learning how to get really good at building Kawasaki's and haul ass. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that's not what I'm doing. So how am I going to get any more knowledge about mechanics, about how suspension works, how racecraft, all this kind of stuff? You sit down and you bench race. You watch the race with those guys. You know, and you ask a question, and if you have the right enthusiasm, and if if they're into it, maybe you can learn. Maybe they'll tell you. You know, and that's just, to me, it's my favorite part.
That's awesome.
It's my favorite part.
Got pumped on this. Just talking about it.
Yeah, dude, because it's cool to see, because it's, again, like I said, you don't want to be judgmental. It's always easy to assess what you think is going on. You watch a race, I think this is this, and that guy is always tucking the front, and blah, 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 blah. And then you learn, like, oh, see how that guy's front end is always lower than the rear, or see how this looks like it's overpowering that, or see how this guy always sits back on his bike, or this guy's taller and he leverages his back of his bike, or whatever. Like you learn all these nuanced things, and you got to remember, like, I love motorcycles. I ride motorcycles. You know, I'm not a professional racer,
but you're gonna enjoy this. You're gonna soak this up.
I want to ride as fast as I can. If it's gonna help me, then it's gonna help me, right?
Yeah.
So you want to learn that kind of stuff. There's always that question, like, when you're a fan, it's oh man, if I could just ride Dungy's bike one time, I bet I'd rip.
Doesn't matter.
You know what I mean? And it's
Doesn't
like,
matter.
Dude, the Cooper Webb could go ride Dungy's bike and be like, how does he ride this? You know, it don't work that way.
Yeah.
You know, and so if you learn the basic fundamentals of how a motorcycle works, or the more you learn about that, the more you can understand as far as how the equipment, the setup should go, right? And then you learn how your rider inputs and how that affects the bike, and how you have to, you legitimately should have good fundamentals. You look at like dudes like Rhino that always pound fundamentals. These have to be good. And then you watch somebody like Jet ride a bike. Yeah,
he has those.
You know, and it's a that's a perfect example of what that looks like. You know, and so that if you pick all that stuff up, piece it together, you know, and if you're around it all the time, then you bet your ass when I'm on my little 125.
That's cool.
I think I'm hauling, you know.
Yep.
You know, I got 2 laps in me, and it's the best 2 laps of my life, you know.
Yes.
But and it
feels like a breakthrough, though, when you try something or do something, and you're like, whoa. There's really no greater feeling, really, than you're like, oh, that worked, that helped. Yeah. And I don't even know if it makes you 1 second faster or not.
No.
But you sense like, oh, if I use the front brake coming out of this corner, look at how much better the bike worked.
Whatever it
feeling.
is. Yeah, whatever it is. And then and the other thing too is, I think what's nice is if you see somebody that's struggling, like let's stay in my wheelhouse with like tires, right?
Yeah.
If someone's at the track, at my local track, and they're struggling changing a tire, and it's like,
hey,
I got this spare tube, you know, and here, let's put this. Yeah, why not?
Okay.
It doesn't take no time for me. You
and
know,
again,
and,
like I said, it's easy for you.
Well, I wish it felt easy, but it's something. It's not something that the odds are I'm not going to mess it up.
Okay,
they're highly in my favor.
You'll
you know,
give yourself that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's like, if it's going to help save someone some time or some stress, then why not?
I was just talking to someone in the TV crew today, and they were like, hey, you ever get recognized? And I'm like, every once in a while, randomly. You know, obviously at the track, yes.
Yeah.
Trying to get me here. Yeah, but occasionally I was getting an oil change in my wife's minivan yesterday, and the person there was like, oh, you do Supercross? And I'm like, yep. They're like, oh, you look familiar. And I was like, you know what's really easy to do, though? Like, if you're really a celebrity, they're going to be all over you, and they're going to want autographs and pictures, and they're not going to let you eat dinner, and you can't even go out.
Yeah.
At my level, it's just like, they just want to like say, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
And all they want you to do is be cool to them for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's not hard to do.
Yeah.
You know, your thing at the track, like, no one's saying changing a tire is fun, but you can be cool with someone for the few minutes that it takes to do that.
Oh yeah.
It's not hard.
Yeah.
It's not hard, but it's like, I can be cool for 5 minutes and help this dude out.
You never know what kind of imprint you're going to leave.
Yeah, that too.
I remember when I was a little kid, there's a couple things that made me love motorcycles. Mm-hmm. And there's one specific thing that made me love GSXRs.
Okay.
I was on a school bus. I was young. I had to be like 7 years old or something. I'm trying to probably a little bit older than that maybe. But I remember a GSXR riding by. There's this dude on the bike. He had a matching jacket to the bike. And the Suzuki livery on GSXRs has always been badass race style livery, right? And so it looked like a race bike.
Yeah.
And I remember he looked over at the bus and he did a wheelie and then just took off.
And that was it.
Dude, it was the baddest thing ever. Like, that was so cool. There was that. Terminator 2 came out.
And the motorcycle.
And John Connor was ripping around. I wanted to be that kid so bad. And then the opening scene with when Arnold goes and he goes into that biker bar and he's just like wrecks the whole crew, takes their clothes, and then they come in and they're like, or he takes all the clothes and then he goes down to take the guy's bike, and the guy comes out with a little sawed-off shotgun. He's like, I can't let you take the man's wheels. And he turns back around, he walks up the steps, and he snacks the gun out of his hand, and then he takes his shades, puts them on, rides off. Bad to the Bones playing. Like, dude. Like
that gets you going.
I lost my mind.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so like that made bikes in my mind like that was the baddest thing in the world. And I always wanted a motorcycle. I could never get one.
Never kidding. Get one. At that point, you did not have one. You discovered this bus.
So this is back. This is when Terminator 2 came out. So this is probably like I'm like 5 years old at this time.
But
right?
you saw this Gixxer.
Oh, dude. And then that was another thing that had happened. And so I'll always remember that the Gixxer specifically. I'll remember that, right? And fast forward, I didn't get a bike till I was 18. Mm-hmm. Got into it, and fast forward through all that. Now we're here, right?
Yeah.
Well. There's a few. I gotta talk to Marshall tonight because I'm bringing him up again. But there's a few times we've been at the track and somebody's Sean Palmer.
Oh wow,
Sean Palmer. That's a good example.
The legend.
Marshall gave Sean Palmer a set of I think he gave him a number plate, maybe from Guy Cooper, when he was a kid.
And it changed Sean Palmer. Like
he always remembers Marshall for doing that. He said that was one of the raddest things that he's ever done.
Wow.
And look at how gnarly Sean Palmer is.
And this was an unknown kid, Sean Palmer.
Yes,
Let's
correct.
Hook him up.
Yeah, it was a kid.
So that's your point.
This was a kid.
And you never know.
You never know who you're gonna who you're making. It could go left or right.
Yeah.
When in that moment, you know. And what is it to you? Don't get so desensitized. Like my mom is the perfect reminding me this where. I'll watch a race. I'll take in what I can. Sometimes I'm busy. I don't get down there as much. And then I'll go home, and I always do a little recap with my mom. And she'll be like, dude, did you see Coop did this? Whoa, whoa, whoa. And you're like, oh, how's so-and-so doing? I was like, what do you mean? Like, he crashed. I'm like, no shit. You're like, oh, I got to call him.
Didn't even know.
Yeah, like, I hope he's good.
Yep.
You know, and then my mom's like on top of it. She got into it when I started going to the pro races.
Yep.
And so... that enthusiasm, it's like reinvigorating. It reminds you, what you're doing. It's, like you said, it's easy to get caught up and think, oh, this is your job. But man, how bad I wanted to be on the other side of the fence and like be around the pros.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so you have to hang on to that. And what's funny is talking to you, talking to anybody else in this paddock, the amount of time that we spend away from family. You would be insane to do this if you didn't love it. Everybody here, whether you're the rider, whether you're doing the broadcast, whether you're filming it,
whether you're changing the tires. Yep.
All of or upper management, flying into the race. Yep. You talk to every single one of those people, and they all have a very similar story. And all of them are like, well, I would say majority of them are like, well, did you race? Not like that.
Everybody was a frustrated, in some way, racer.
That's the part they don't want to talk about.
And I'll tell you the other thing, man. Like, there's not a ton of money. There is, obviously. This will be a whole other topic for another show. I always say the reason I never complain about what's going on here is because I've covered just enough other racing to see them say, man, I wish we had what Supercross and Motocross had. You know, maybe NASCAR and F1 doesn't feel that way, and MotoGP, but that's about it. I mean, I've done off-road truck races where their dream would be to have what Supercross has, which is factory riders for the last 50 years, same teams, paying 2 or 3 riders every year. You're handled. Your only job is to perform. There's so much racing where you're half hobby, you're the mechanic and the racer.
Yeah.
We have it pretty good here. Yet at the same time, it's not massive. It isn't. Like, no one is making so much money here. Even the racers, even the ones who are making millions, it's still probably not even worth it from a monetary standpoint. The sacrifice, risk, all the things they put in, and then the road it took to get there.
It is pretty sick riding a dirt bike, though, dude.
That's the reason they're doing it. That's what I mean.
Like,
it's not the money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's because it's sick. Yeah. That's why. Even the dude,
like if you had
the guy who made the most money, it's not about that.
Think about if you had a ton of money and time.
You would do it.
What would you do? You go buy a motorcycle.
Absolutely.
What are you talking about?
Absolutely.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I agree. That's what does it. It's not, you know, occasionally people want to go off on rants and be like, the riders should make more. And I'm like, here's the problem. Everybody here is working at a discount rate. Everybody, I would be, look, if I was the Major League Baseball announcer, I would do the exact same job and I would get paid way more money.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there. Yeah.
But guess what? Yeah. This is what we love.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here. You would never do this job. It does not pencil out.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. We just like it.
It's fulfilling, man.
Yeah.
It's really fulfilling. Yes. Getting to be around it and yeah. I got to get up tomorrow. Make sure the tires are dialed.
I know.
You know what I mean? But it's like it's fulfilling because it's like, number one, that's the other thing people don't realize, or what I would say people don't realize that maybe don't follow racing.
Yeah.
What they don't realize is, like, I'll be sitting on a plane.
Yeah.
Flying somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And I love talking to people, so sometimes the conversation comes up. This person's really interesting.
Yeah.
Whether they own a business or they're doing that or blah, blah, blah. And then they ask, well, what do you do? And it's always, I let them talk. You know, I always want to learn about them.
Okay.
And then they're, what do you do? And I said, I change tires. And they're like, but you're flying all the way out here to change tires? Like, yeah.
Yeah,
it's pretty sick.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just kind of like, it's kind of a weird thing. And they're like, they're so enthused up to that point that they're trying to be nice. They're like, oh, that's cool. Like, you know, they're like, no, it's actually sick.
Well, it depends on how much you tell them.
You know, well, what's funny, because, well, then you go, I like going that little shock value.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I want to see how they react, and then you go into detail about it, and it is really cool. I think what the company does is outstanding. You know, and being a part of that is what's really cool. But it's just funny because if you're in moto, one thing you can appreciate is if someone can change your tire without messing it up, scratching wheels. None of
we
that
know.
Stuff. Like, you appreciate that.
Yes.
So if somebody does it for you, you're just like, hey. Thanks, man. Hey, here's a cold beer. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like, no one ever questions that at the end of the day. Everybody's like, oh, he earned it. It's all good.
No one's going to go past you guys and be like, do they really deserve? Do they?
They
earned it.
Yeah,
they
they're
earned
all
it
cool,
today.
man.
Yes.
And I'm the weakest link in that program, but that's
still getting it done.
That's still getting after it, man, because those dudes are bad.
That's impressive.
They're bad.
It's been fun. It's been cool to do. Yeah, it's the whole thing, man. We have it all in common. You just have to love being here. You got to love doing it. It would be very hard to train somebody. You know, we would like to believe the sport is so cool that you're going to, you know, anyone who discovers it is going to love it that much. You know, we want to think we can get more fans, and maybe we do.
Yeah.
But a lot of it at this level, when it's grinding like we are, it's pretty much got to be in you right from the start.
Well, that's where you got, but you have to remember, though, that's why when you encounter somebody, when you encounter that little kid, you don't know who that kid's going to grow up to be. That's a blank palette right there.
Oh, you know the Sean Palmer story,
blank canvas.
Right? Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You have no idea what that's going to be. So that's where, when it does feel like a job, or it does get a little mundane or whatever, you got to remind yourself why you're doing it, and just do yourself a favor and pass that on once a day, at the very least once a day. Just make it a point to make a conscious effort once a day to pass that on to somebody. If you plant 100 seeds, one of them's bound to sprout.
Bro, it's race day. I'm going to do it automatically. I'm fired up. It's Saturday. How could you not be? I'm in a great mood on race day, man. It's a fun job, so it's not hard to do that. We love being here. Yeah. Cool.
thank you for taking the time. Dude.
Yeah, glad to do
I
it.
appreciate it,
Yep.
and we'll hope to do more.
Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how many you get in the hopper. If you get enough people around for me to go to a round 2, I know you've done something right. Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yes, exactly.
That's the goal.
Cool.
Hold me accountable to it.
I will. I'll be like, I'm not going to be your third guest.
No,
I'm not going to be second and third. Like,
No,
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's
if
not.
I'm
I
coming
wouldn't
back
even
around,
ask
that means
you.
you got a lot, which is good for
Yeah,
you.
yeah. You
Yep.
got to be coming to me. Be like, hey, dude, I would
need
love
time.
to get on your show.
It's true. It's true. You never know, man.
I
Yep.
appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Cool. Yep.